Hey, Archie, have you ever noticed how more money doesn't always make you feel better?
Rob, I have noticed that. So let's talk about how you can make it more meaningful. Weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. This is Last Paycheck. Welcome back to the Last Paycheck Podcast, brought to you by Hoxton Planning and Management. We're your hosts, CFP professionals Archie Hoxton and Rob Hoxton. And today, we're going to talk about making your money meaningful and really looking at your financial decisions from the perspective of living a meaningful, rich life, and not just looking at your finances in terms of how do I build as much wealth as possible. You know, that's one way to do it. I think a lot of people, kind of get to a point in retirement or they're about to retire, and they've just been kind of building wealth and trying to make good decisions that build wealth for them, that enable them to retire. And then they get to retirement, and one of the more meaningful aspects of their life, at least one of the things that they spend a lot of their time on, goes away, their work. And it kind of leaves, for many people, a kind of a meaning gap.
I love this topic, Archie. And one of my favorite things to do is to talk to other small business people. We are small business people. We run a multi-generational family financial planning business, and so we're talking about money with other business owners, and it's so interesting. If you build a successful business, along the way, you've probably had some vision of what you wanted to accomplish, and you've had to set goals, right? Like maybe you had a 30-year goal, and then you planned backward from that so that you'd know what you needed to do in the next 30 days, the next 90 days, the next 6 months, the next year, 3, 5, 10, 25, 30 years. And so much of it has been about hitting certain business metrics, which are often financial.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that for me, after we got to the point in this business where I wasn't worried so much about whether I'd be able to pay the mortgage and buy the groceries, there came a point where I really got sick of setting my goals based on money. I found that to be really stressful.
Yeah.
If all I was concerned about is that we would have gross revenue of X and a net income of X, and, if that's what I was focusing on, I found that to be really stressful. If however, I focused on goals that would drive the revenue but weren't directly related to money, I found that so much more fulfilling. And I don't know what it is about that that's so profound, but it really is. And it's really fun to talk to people about this. I love to do it.
Yeah. Well, and it applies to non-business owners too. People who go to work, contribute to their 401k, maybe contribute to an IRA or a brokerage account, and prepare for retirement, 529s for kids, education. And you've got these goals, like I know I need to have X in order to retire. I know I need to have Y in order to pay for the kids' college. But there may come a time where you realize I'm kind of hitting that. And so when you get beyond that, it's not that you should, just stop trying to build more and making good decisions that build more. I think you have to sort of ask the question of why am I doing it? Whether it's for the business, for your business, or for your personal goals. Because just building wealth to build wealth is sort of like a never-ending, infinite objective that you're trying to achieve in a finite period of time.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you can't take it with you. So I think defining why you're doing it is important. If you're going to build more than you need, why? And there are plenty of really good answers to that question. It's not a rhetorical question. It's are you attempting to build a legacy? Do you want to do charitable giving? Legacy for your children. Do you want to pass something on to them? Do you want to make sure that, healthcare and student debt isn't something that gets in the way of your kids and grandkids flourishing? So I think the a good place to start is when you're asking these questions. How do I make meaningful decisions? How do I think about my money from a meaning perspective? I think you have to start with your core values.
Right. And frame the role that money really plays in your life. I for about 6 years, I worked with this visionary entrepreneur in the personal finance space, a gentleman named Joe Duran. And I used to love I loved the way that he talked about money. He would equate it to gas in your car when you're taking a vacation. You know, you're taking this trip and you're not driving to find gas. You're driving to find your destination, some fun place for vacation with your family. Gas was really important because it's what allowed you to get there, but it wasn't the reason you were embarking on this journey.
Right.
And I thought that really rang true for me.
Yeah.
It was a pretty cool analogy. So yeah, you got to have it. You got to pay attention to the gas gauge.
Right.
But it can't be the whole reason you're taking that trip.
Right. Yeah, you make stops along the way for the gas, and you don't stay at home and hoard the gas.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, that's probably dangerous anyway.
Yeah, and you don't do stupid things with the gas. You make sure you make good, smart decisions.
Yeah, you don't light up a cigarette in your when you're pumping.
Yeah.
Yeah, so figuring out, sort of, if you want to look at that analogy, what the destination is, or what if you know your core values and you kind of think about it and write it down and assess your financial goals in light of those values, I think that's helpful. So maybe one of your top values is spending time with your family, right? Well, then if your goal is I want to accumulate as much wealth as possible, you might have to take time away from your family to do that. So that's sort of an incongruency there. Maybe the goal is I'm not going to save as much as I possibly can. I'm going to save enough to retire when I want to educate my children, and not work so much that I'm going to be missing their sporting events and their graduation ceremonies, and we're going to take vacations along the way. Like I'm going to save a little less because I have a good financial plan in place. I know I can afford to save less so that I can, realize and bring into reality this core value of mine, which is spending time with my family.
Right. You need to have that core value front and center. You need to be reminding yourself of those core values.
Right.
Because it's so easy to drift away from them.
Right.
And when it comes to your financial success, you can't take it with you.
Right.
At some point, your kids or grandkids or the IRS or whomever is going to receive your money is going to receive your money. And if you can afford to do it, why not use it to further whatever your core values are?
Yeah.
If it's spending time with family, make it really easy to do fun family things. Maybe take your family on a trip.
Yeah.
And in doing that, you achieve two things. So a bad thing is allowing your family members to inherit a lot of wealth if they haven't been trained on how to handle it.
Yeah.
Right.
Or if you haven't instilled those values in them in such a way that they can align that money to those values.
So if all you do is pursue more and more wealth, you're not spending time on the things that maybe you say are your core values.
Right. Plus,
you might be creating this massive landmine for the next generation.
Right.
So there are all these things that are interconnected that, if you can get really clear about what's important to you, have a financial plan so you know what you can afford to do in furtherance of those core values, you might be able to, accomplish a couple of things that are positive.
Yeah. Well, and there's no accomplishing building wealth. Like there's no final accomplishment unless you set a number. But even then, money is always in flux if you're investing. And so it's a never-ending goal. There's never enough. And if you set your sights too aggressively on that, it can destroy your sense of peace and accomplishment of bigger, more important goals that you value. Yeah, so I think this is again where financial planning, one of the areas that's sort of a subjective area that is so important, is making sure your goals are aligned to your values and that you're meeting those goals to, sort of bring into reality these values. And this could apply not if you're like saving too much and pulling back. It could also mean what's really important to you is to retire early and have more time when you're younger and have more energy, to spend with your grandkids or to travel or to go, abroad and do a mission or something like that. I mean, it could be all kinds of things. That might mean that you have to contribute more and save more, but now you know why. Maybe you're making a sacrifice, but you know it to be a worthy sacrifice because you've kind of defined and laid out to yourself, this is what's important to me. And so that sacrifice becomes meaningful because it would be, sometimes it does mean making a financial sacrifice for something better, which can be a good thing.
One of the things that people, we talked about this, Archie, in an episode, maybe just a couple of episodes ago, where people who have been really good at saving and investing during their working years often have a really tough time transitioning from a saving state of mind to a spending state of mind. It's just, there's something about that can be very complex and difficult to do and stressful. And it kind of goes hand in hand with this concept of aligning your thinking about money with your goals, having that alignment in good shape. And the thing that always strikes me is that there's this general belief that when it comes to money, more is better.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't, to a degree, yes, it's nice. And it sounds, absurd for me to say that having more money isn't necessarily better. And that's particularly true if you're having a hard time making ends meet.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There is a point in life where it might always mean better. It solves the problems that you're facing right now.
Right.
Alleviates the stress.
But if you're someone who has accumulated enough to have a comfortable retirement and then you have some excess, more isn't necessarily better. And I remember thinking about getting a bonus. Like I got a bonus from when I still had another employer before, 34 years ago when we started this business.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting the bonus and there was a lot of anticipation, wondering what the bonus would be. I'd had a really good year and I figured that my employer would reward me with this bonus. And I got the bonus, and for about 5 minutes, it felt so good.
Mm-hmm.
I deposited it in my checking account, and then I got no more joy from it.
Yeah.
It was so weird. I thought about it, and I was like, why is it that the anticipation of the bonus is so much more enjoyable than actually having it in the account? Putting it in the account felt great. But once it was there, it didn't really have the same...
Kind of just blends in.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's like being really excited about getting to the gas station in a way. It's like, okay, I did it. Now what? And then, the natural next thing is, well, the next bonus. And I think if you're someone who has been an aggressive saver and a really good saver and super on it with your money, that sort of motivation to build more can lead to more and kind of that can be that starting point. But eventually you won't really be able to make more. You might be. Most people come to a point where they can't really. You can't work for your entire life. Most people come to a point where they kind of have to retire, or at least move to something that's a little less demanding. And you sort of have to figure out, well, what is next? Because now this thing that I was chasing my whole life, I can't really chase more in the same way. The only way to do that would be to take too much investment risk, but you're retired, so it doesn't make sense. You have to find the next sort of thing to point your sights at. And it doesn't have to start if you are doing financial planning and you know you're doing all the right things to hit these goals that matter to you. It's not as important to set your sights on always more and more and more. You can say, well, okay, I know I'm doing all the right things. Could I do something else really meaningful with this money? I know I'm provided for. My kids are provided for. What's next?
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm just going to say to anybody watching or listening that if at any point in your life money has been your primary focus, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
it is not fulfilling.
It can cause a lot of anxiety too.
Yeah, it can cause a lot of pain in your life.
Yeah,
it's important.
Because it can also relieve pain and anxiety and solve problems, to be clear. But there is a point where you're like, hey, I'm chugging along. I'm hitting these goals.
Yeah. And key to this is having a financial plan. I can't say it enough. Having a financial plan so you know how much you need, so that you're not worrying about running out of money, so that you can free yourself up to use your money for the things that are important to you.
Yeah. That way, you know that you're not by default saving more than you need to and missing out on opportunities to create meaning in your life or in somebody else's life. Or you're not undersaving and realizing that you're going to get to a point where you are in a tough spot and can't afford to do anything beyond just barely scrape by. Okay. That's where the financial planning process comes in. So yeah, I mean, we could keep going on this topic for a while. I think we're about out of time. So if you like this topic and you want to tune in, we do all kinds of topics. You can subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell for notifications so you know when we release new videos. Leave us a comment if you have thoughts or questions or you have an idea for an episode. We'd love to hear that. And then share it with your family and friends, and we'll hope to see you next time. You've been watching Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. If you like this show, be sure to hit like and subscribe. Last Paycheck is available anywhere you get your podcasts.